Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Just recently, several weeks back, there was an article that appeared in Medium.com, and the headline reads, "A scientist branded as a, quote, full-fledged UFO nut, end quote, responds to skepticism." And this was with regards to microbiologist Garry Nolan, who is he's taking facing a lot of derision from taking the possibility of extraterrestrials seriously. This is a very good article and very enlightening, and basically hits home with some of the things that I've been talking about. I've talked about how some of the UFO debunkers, actually, it's them. It's the UFO debunkers themselves who are the ones who are acting like cultists. They're the ones who claim that people who are interested in UFOs and who study it and want to find out answers about UFOs are actually part of a cult. Actually, the cult seems to be on their side of the fence, the debunkers. And actually, Garry Nolan, this microbiologist, actually hints at that in this article. He actually says, even though this guy Nolan is not someone who he's not like someone like me, for instance. Like, he doesn't accept that there's aliens here. I believe that they actually are here, period. Okay. This guy wants to learn. He wants to understand more. He's actually joined that. He's become part of that Galileo project that's headed by Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb to investigate UFOs and to find out what's going on, to see if they could come up with something, prove it scientifically, come up with some scientific answer behind them. But that's not enough. I mean, just the fact that the fact that Nolan is associated with any of these things, he's being called out by debunkers who, what they try to do is they try to embarrass any scientist who wants to investigate UFOs. They embarrass them and try to shame them and say, basically they're nuts. Try to paint them as idiots for looking into this, or. But Nolan himself says, in this article that. That he thinks that, they're the ones. He actually says that there's a quote in here. He says, this person, that one of these people that call him out, a skeptic, says he's the one who's almost acting like a cultist. You basically have closed your mind to what the possibilities are. And anyhow, the person he's talking about here is a writer named Jason Colavito, who wrote, somebody wrote on Twitter early February that it says here, there was a guy named David Haith who wrote, we're barely out of the caves and need to mature before contact, says Dr. Garry Nolan. And basically Nolan is, I guess this is with regards to Nolan's research into the topic. And then this writer, Jason Covalito, wrote back, Garry Nolan is a full-fledged UFO nut masquerading as an objective researcher. Despite finding no evidence whatsoever of extraterrestrial metals, alien bodies, etc., he has a teleological view of aliens' efforts to tutor us into galactic brotherhood, which is total nonsense. That was a totally bogus statement by Colavito. And anyway, again, this Colavito, and as will other skeptics and debunkers, they try to shame any scientist that tries to look into this as they're wasting their time or they're nuts, and they can't be taken seriously anymore. They basically try to ruin their careers. That's what it's an attempt to do. But in this day and age, that doesn't seem to work anymore. I mean, with the fact that the Pentagon has, admitted that there are things out there that they do not understand. They don't know where these objects are coming from. They don't know. They can't explain the way they could fly. They don't know. They say it could be China or Russia or they don't say extraterrestrial, but they use the word other. So I think the writing is, you could read between the writing there, and it's extraterrestrial. It's always been extraterrestrial. There are people within government that have known this for a long time. But anyway, they don't share this information with the general public or with the scientific community. Not the vast mainstream scientific community. Anyway, I'm sure there are some scientists that know exactly what's going on and who are working for the government or a private corporation that's working with the government and studying these things. There's no question in my mind about that. However, let's look at some of this article. It was written by David Bates. He says here, we won't read the whole thing. I will leave the link for it here. But he says he talks about the Galileo project, and I've talked about that on this before. This new Galileo project is a group of scientists that are going to investigate UFOs, and this Garry Nolan is going to be one of them. He recently was interviewed by MIT artificial intelligence scientist Lex Friedman on his YouTube channel. And according to this article, it says, for the casual listener who was perhaps agnostic on UFOs, it was a fascinating, informative, and nuanced conversation between two thoughtful scientists about how one approaches and studies scientific anomalies. For skeptics, however, high danger. Writer Jason Covalito, always quick to hyperventilate at the mere suggestion of a scientist, or anyone really, that UFOs and other anomalies with paranormal shades are worthy of attention and professional study, immediately popped off. And that's when he made his comment that basically Nolan has now become a full-fledged UFO nut. Okay, nut. Who's the nut here, Covalito? Who's the nut? Who's the real nut here? Why can't scientists even look into this? You don't want them to even look into this. You don't want to let them try to study something that's obviously people have been seeing for decades. It has to be a fear. There has to be some deep-seated fear within these people. They're just afraid of change. They're afraid of a new change to science, afraid of a new reality that there's an extraterrestrial presence here on Earth. Beings that are most certainly more technologically advanced than humankind. And I don't know, why would you attack that? See, this is what the debunkers like to do. They like to attack people. They don't really come up with any kind of answers for this phenomenon. Never do. It's always attack the any scientist that wants to look into this. That's why it's been so hard over the decades for serious mainstream scientists to ever be brave enough to decide to study UFOs, because if they did, this is the kind of stuff that would happen. There are a lot of different debunkers that will just try to make them look like fools and say that they shouldn't even be considered serious people. But see, that doesn't work now. These debunkers need to understand it doesn't fly now. It just doesn't work. I mean, you have the Pentagon. You're not going to go against that, what they're saying now. If you want to go all these years before, right, they went along with the Pentagon line, right, that there's nothing to it. Now the Pentagon's line is different. Before these debunkers were all, right, they lined up right behind the Pentagon saying, yeah, they see that there's nothing to it. The Pentagon would have told us. Now the Pentagon's saying there's objects out there, we can't explain them. And you're telling scientists that they shouldn't look into this, that they're UFO nuts if they do? It doesn't make any sense. It has to. There's some other reason behind this, and it has to deal with some sort of a deep-seated fear. That's my belief. I could be wrong. But anyway, this article continues. It says, it's not clear whether Covalito actually listened to the interview or not, and I don't care. By his logic, I guess it will not be permissible to study the anomaly until we have definitive proof of what it is. Exactly. So you're supposed to sit back and just not even look at it and just wait till we know what it is? How are you going to know what it is until you study it? You got to study it to figure out what it is, right? In an article for the New Republic in December, Covalito snidely referred to Nolan as the current expert on crash saucer parts and established guilt by association by noting he is a close colleague of Christopher Mellon and Luis Elizondo's circle of UFO enthusiasts. Fellow skeptic/journalist Keith Clore also weighed in recently with an article at space.com demanding to know, quote, why is Harvard University astrophysicist Avi Loeb working with ardent UFO believers, end quote. And then continuing with the article here, says, this is all of a piece of the criticism one regularly sees in Skeptical Inquirer's UFO articles, sneering at otherwise reputable scientists and intellectuals because they are also interested in ufology. The message to scientists is clear. Be careful or who you talk to. UFO enthusiasts and believers are out of bounds. Pseudoscience. Yeah, that's what they do. They try to make it sound like it's all nonsense and crazy if you try to investigate this stuff. And then the article continues here. It says, so who is this full-fledged UFO nut masquerading as an objective researcher from California, and what's his deal? And it goes on about Nolan that he's is the Ratchford and Carlotta A. Harris Professor in the Department of Pathology at Stanford University School of Medicine. He's typically referred to as a microbiologist and sometimes as an immunologist. With more than 300 research papers to his name and 40 U.S. patents, Nolan is regarded as one of Stanford's top inventors. His Ph.D. is in genetics, and he did his postdoctoral work with Nobelist Dr. David Baltimore in biochemistry. He even has a laboratory at Stanford named after him, and it is here that he and other researchers do work on problems such as hematopoiesis, I can't pronounce that word, cancer, leukemia, and other and inflammation, all of which, come to think of it, have shades of the anomalous. A cancerous cell, after all, is an anomaly in an otherwise healthy body. Nolan's sin, according to Colavito and presumably other skeptics, is that he is interested in ufology and has actually done some lab work related to it. Those projects, some of which he discussed with Friedman, include... he conducted analysis on Atta, a 6-inch tall skeleton with a conical-shaped head that Stephen Greer was telling everyone was alien. Now, I remember this thing, and this guy came forward and looked at it, and Nolan determined that it was human. You know, he debunked Greer's claim, you know. And according to... Nolan, debunking is a loaded term. It sort of assumes you're going in purposefully to prove something is wrong. I wasn't. I was just going in to collect the data, and I showed that this one was human. In another case, he took a look at the so-called Star Child skull, and he went in to look and review another researcher's DNA sequencing on that skull, and he said, "This is human. End of story." The people who owned the thing at the time disagreed with me, and then eventually another group came in and proved that I was right. So, see, this guy's looking into these things. He's finding that so far the things that he's looked at here are human. Okay, some of this evidence that was brought forth that some people were claiming was alien, he determined no, that it was human. And finally, regarding the crashed saucer parts Colavito referred to, Friedman asked him about it. "You are in possession of UFO materials yourself," Friedman began. Nolan actually corrected him. "Claimed UFO materials," he replied. Then he talked about one of those cases in which material thought to be anomalous was brought to him. In at least one of the materials, as we studied it, the isotope ratios, in this case it was magnesium, were way off normal, he said. And I just don't know why. It doesn't prove anything. All it proves that it was probably accomplished by some type of industrial process. So see right there. So this guy, he looked into some things, actually debunked some things, but see, that's not good enough for the skeptic, the debunker out there. That's not even good enough. This guy looked into stuff, debunked stuff himself, but that's not good enough. If you even go near this field, you're going to be a nut. This guy just wants answers like everybody else. He's not, going to go out there and say it's aliens. He's not going to be like someone like me. I just know it is. Of course, I've seen one of these craft up close, so I've made my mind up a long time ago. And of course, there was a being that I saw. I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, he goes on. He says he doesn't even believe in the Greys, but I believe that people think they see them. Regarding Bob Lazar, he says, "I don't believe in the Bob Lazar story, to be quite honest." So... again, this guy's, he's not on the, what you would consider the fringe part of this whole study at all. He's a scientist looking for answers, and he's studying things and he's debunking things as he sees them. And he doesn't believe in Bob Lazar, although a lot of people do believe in. I would say about half the people who are interested in ufology, either half of them believe Lazar and half of them don't. I'm actually one of the people that believe Bob Lazar. And then did Nolan himself ever experience anything? He says here, I've not seen anything personally, but if I believe the people, I don't think they can lie. But if I believe the people, I don't think can lie. Yes. So if he believes the people that he doesn't believe can lie, then yes, he's gonna think that, okay, there must be something to it. Not everyone out there that's telling stories about UFOs and aliens are lying. Okay, I'm sure that there are some people out there that lie about this, and there's some people out there who are insane. And there are some people out there who are on drugs or drunk. I'm sure there's a percentage of people out there that have experienced these things that they were incapacitated in some way or another. But I would say a vast majority of these people that experience things had nothing wrong with them. There was nothing wrong with me when I saw a UFO. I was sober as a judge. And when I saw that alien in my room when I was a kid, I was a little kid. Okay. So anyway, you have to read this whole article. It's a pretty long article, and but it's very interesting, and it just goes to show you, the mindset of the debunker. And especially now, it just doesn't make any sense to continue attacking a scientist that's interested in this subject. Why do that? I mean, you look like a fool now. You look like an idiot. Again, I've said this before. If you did this 10 years ago, that's a different story. That was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it'd be a different story, because back then you didn't have the scientists today did not have statements from the Pentagon saying there's UFOs are out there and we don't know what they are and how they're operating, and apparently they defy the law of physics. They didn't have that back then. Okay, but now they do. So it doesn't make any sense to come out and attack a scientist that wants to look into something that the Pentagon says is there. You're going to call them out. You're going to call a scientist a UFO nut. See, these people are afraid. They're afraid of extraterrestrials, and I guess in a way, who wouldn't be? Who wouldn't be afraid of an advanced intelligence that's present here on Earth? Because we don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. It could be bad. It could be good. It could be a combination of both, bad and good. Who knows? We just don't know. But they're here. Okay, don't kid yourself. They're here. I don't agree with Nolan, actually. I don't agree. I mean, I'm glad, though. I am very happy that people like Nolan and Loeb are going to seriously look into this subject, because I think they're going to get answers, and they're going to find answers that some people are not going to like. It's going to be namely the debunkers in the end, because even if, put it this way, they're not, if they're actually scientists taking this seriously now, right? That means there's going to be, they're going to come to some kind of a conclusion, and the conclusion's going to be, in the end, I am certain, even though they didn't get there yet, they didn't reach the conclusion themselves, and if any of them were to hear what I'm saying right now, they would totally disagree with me. But I am certain that in the end, they're going to either come up with a conclusion that it's extraterrestrial, or that they can't explain it. That could be very, very well. The explanation might be we just can't explain it. Jacques Vallée recently made a statement that he said he still doesn't know what. He's been studying UFOs since the 50s. He's in his 80s now. He still doesn't know what they are. He doesn't know what UFOs are, and he's been looking into this subject his whole life. Interviewed hundreds of thousands of people, probably, I'm sure by this point. Investigated some of the biggest cases, and he still doesn't know what they are. Nobody really knows. I mean, I believe it's extraterrestrial. So Vallée's not. He's not ready to make that leap yet. But he thinks it's something. He doesn't know. He just doesn't know what. He says it could be interdimensional. It could be. Who knows? But they're here. As far as I'm concerned, if it's not extraterrestrial, then it's something else. It's some intelligence that's greater than a human's. I just know that it has to be something that's not human, because there's just too many different reports from different people over the years, the abduction cases, and some people saw these things without having to be hypnotized, and they weren't lying. Like, I completely believe, for instance, like the two guys in Pascagoula back in '73 that got abducted while they're sitting on the Pascagoula River fishing at night. I completely believe that they saw these UFO fly up behind them, and a ramp open up, and these robots floated over to them and grabbed them, dragged them into the saucer, examined them, and then set them free again. I totally believe those two. One of them is dead now, but the other one's still alive, and he still stands by his story. I completely believe them. They had no reason to lie. Why would they lie about that? and maintain, if it was a lie, and they maintain that, just like Travis Walton. I completely believe Travis Walton. There was 6 other witnesses that saw it happen. I see that there's some people out there still trying to debunk this. There was that Dr. Todd Grande, came out with a video in about a year ago or so, when he claimed that that he was Walton's a liar, as were all the people that were involved in this, that they were lying. Obviously, according to him, obviously they're crazy, or they're not. They're just lying, that it was a scam. Obviously, according to Dr. Grande, and he made statements that weren't true in his analysis of this. He said that Walton had just watched a TV movie at the time about the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, which had aired 2 weeks prior to Walton's 1975 abduction, right? Except that Walton said he never saw that show. He never watched it. But according to Grande, he just said, yeah, he did see it. He did see it. And he didn't see it. He didn't see it. Again, they have to, when things don't conform to a debunker's way of thinking, they'll either not include that information in their analysis, right? Or they'll just lie. They'll make something up. That's what Grande did. Check this article out. It's very interesting. And it's the debunkers. You heard it here, from this guy here, microbiologist Garry Nolan. Now, if you've seen this guy on YouTube or on TV, you would see that this guy's a smart guy, okay? And he's just interested in getting to the bottom of this. He's not a UFO nut. The only nuts out there are the debunkers.